Welcome to the Steel Curtain Podcast. It is Wednesday, May 7th, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have traded George Pickens and a fifth-round pick in the 2027 NFL Draft to the Dallas Cowboys for a third rounder next year and a fifth rounder in 2027. Big news, so we have to hop onto it. I'm Josh Yourish, and today I'm hopping over to the Wednesday slot. If you couldn't tell, I'm typically your Monday host. I'm over on Wednesday with Shayne Kubas, stillcurtain.com contributor, to break down the Pickens trade, assess the Steelers wide receiver room, potential free agent targets now that Pickens is gone. And we're going to talk about some of the quarterbacks that the Steelers could use that additional draft capital to go and get in the 2026 draft. We actually had that planned before the Pickens trade, but it's perfect because, Shayne, this seems like exactly what the Steelers' plan is. Kick the can down the road until next year and then go all in with these extra draft picks to get your quarterback of the future.
I agree. I think that this has been kind of what they've been building towards this whole offseason with the move to get Metcalf, which at the time, for me at least, I wasn't a huge fan with Pickens already on the roster, but clearly that was because they thought he might not be. And now that that's happened, makes a lot more sense. Still don't love the price tag personally, but I get it, especially if you want that type of big body, fast receiver that can get down the field. They can find guys around him to make a competent offense. But this is all about getting ammo for next year to be able to go after whatever quarterback that they're either in range for or they think is the future. Because right now, obviously, especially whether Aaron Rodgers shows up or not, which we'll talk about him at some point, they don't have the future on the roster right now, I'm pretty sure.
No, absolutely not. And I know I was split with kind of you and Tommy on the DK Metcalf trade. I liked it a lot more. And a reason I liked it so much is because I felt like it gave the Steelers the freedom to do exactly what they did today and move off of George Pickens. Because last season, especially after the Dallas game, I was ready to be done. I was ready to cut bait there. And I feel like at that point in the season, the Steelers wouldn't have been able to get a third for George Pickens. A third's what they got for Antonio Brown. I mean, obviously that's a complicated situation as well, but a third is pretty good for a receiver that is this mercurial. He's been very productive, but he's maybe a headache to deal with. And he's heading into the final year of his contract, going to be wanting a contract extension. I think I saw some reports today that he doesn't want one just yet, or he's not going to be pushing for one right away in Dallas, but he's going to want to get paid at some point, heading into the final year of the deal, a third round pick and moving up in the fifth in 2027. I mean, that's not huge, but to me, that's a really good return for the Steelers to get off of a player that I wanted them to get off of for almost nothing midway through the season. What say you about the value that the Steelers got here? Do you think this is a good move for them?
I think it's complicated because for me at least, and a lot of people that I talk to and things like that, I really like the talent that Pickens possesses. He's a very unique receiver, right? And I'm sure you do, but he's a very unique receiver in the way that he wins, where he's maybe the best, like at least in terms of ability to do it, contested catch guy I've maybe ever seen personally. I mean, his ability to sky and just get over guys and make catches like that are unbelievable. But the rest of his game is very hit or miss at times. He shows run after the catch ability sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he'll put a good route on somebody, sometimes he won't. The blocking effort, when he really wants to do it, he's one of the best at it, in my opinion, but he often doesn't. Like, everything about him is just so difficult to pin down that getting a third round pick for a guy that's entering last year of his deal, who does have headaches on the field. We've seen many instances of this with his time with the Steelers. I think getting what they got for him is good value considering all those things. But in the back of your head, you also are wishing kind of that, what if this would have worked out? What if he would have been able to keep his head on straight? What if they would have been able to get through to him in a way they haven't so far? So that part of it makes me a little bit sad. I'm not going to lie, as a Steelers fan. But as for value-wise, though, it makes total sense to get more than you could get as a comp pick if he does leave in free agency now, just to make sure you do that, because he might not get a big deal in free agency if he doesn't perform this year for you. So
I was excited about the potential of a Pickens Metcalf pairing just because that's so unique in
freaks
the
NFL.
On
freaks, right?
Yeah, just absolute freaks streaking down both sidelines. Whoever's your quarterback, right? If your quarterback truly is Mason Rudolph, there's no better receiver room you could possibly put around him than two guys that are just going to win on deep balls. Because to me, that's the best. The really only strength of Mason Rudolph's game is the way he throws the deep ball. And if it's Aaron Rodgers, even better because he's obviously better at pushing the ball down the field. I was so ready for this era of diva, I guess is the word you want to use.
It
Wide
complicated with him, but
receiver.
yeah, sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
pain in the ass wide receivers. I was
mhm,
just so ready to be rid of it and be done with it from all of the different guys in the past. Even a Chase Claypool who was unproductive or an Antonio Brown who's one of the best ever.
right.
I was just ready to be done with that in Pittsburgh, and I'm really glad that they were able to get something pretty valuable for that because a third round pick is legitimate ammo to move up.
Mhm.
So Shayne, they do still have to play games this year, right?
Yes,
Where
they
we
do.
want to look ahead to the
That's
2026 draft,
yeah.
but this offense still has to function. Aaron Rodgers or not, it still has to be able to move the ball down the field somewhat.
Mhm.
They're going to attempt to win every game. We know that about Mike Tomlin. What receivers do you see on the roster that can step up and fill this wide receiver 2 role? Do you feel like there's some confidence? Do you have any confidence in the guys on the roster right now? What are your feelings about the offense heading into the year?
I think as things stand, assuming they don't make a move, which I do think something is coming besides
Mhm.
just the Robert Woods move. Like he's been a really excellent wide receiver too in the past, but I think his days of that are behind him at this
Yeah.
point, right? So you look on the roster currently, I think this could be a minor kind of endorsement for someone like Roman Wilson, the third round pick from 2024. He
Mhm.
didn't get really any chance to get going as a rookie, for multiple reasons, injuries, just depth chart never really lined up for him. But he's going to have a full offseason, you hope. The injury should be behind him. If he's able to stay healthy through training camp and can show the route running and savvy he showed at Michigan, he could easily slot in as this team's number 2 receiver in terms of targets, right, to the
Yeah.
receivers. Maybe more the slot option ultimately with his build, but still a second receiver for this team. Outside of him, like we've kind of seen Calvin Austin have a mini not breakout, I would say, but like show that he's an NFL player last year, which is great. Like he's a
That was
piece of an
nice. I enjoyed
offense
that. Yeah.
for sure. Like he's a piece of the offense. But I think it's going to be, unless they do add like an Amari Cooper or Gabe Davis, who apparently is open now because the Jacks cut him. Like, unless they add somebody of that ilk, I think it's going to be a committee approach to that second outside receiver spot, with hopefully Roman Wilson being the guy that breaks out in the slot in year 2.
Yeah, I feel like Wilson is the name you absolutely have to talk
Yeah,
about. And I don't know exactly what you thought about his film specifically, but I know I liked him a lot
I
at
liked him a lot
Michigan.
too. I had him in my
I
top 60 players, I think, in the draft last year. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I really when I dug into it more after the Steelers took him. I really liked his film. I liked the way he was able to kind of throttle down in zone and find openings. I don't know what the
there,
Steelers are doing. We're going to
yeah,
talk about that.
yeah,
What
we
the
will.
Steelers
Yeah,
plan is in the chat. Alexander, thanks for hopping in, a Cowboys fan.
yep.
Love to see, you hopping by. Enjoy George Pickens.
Hopefully he's good for
Um,
you guys. I hope so. But yeah,
yeah, because we're gonna talk about that too, the fit in Dallas. So if you want to
yep.
hang out, we're gonna hit on that as well. But specifically to Wilson, I saw a legitimate wide receiver too there, whether it's a Z or a slot,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a slot only.
No, but yeah,
And
it's
that's valuable because they have a lot of slot bodies on that roster
they do.
again. But yeah, Roman Wilson's the guy that jumps to my mind of, okay, they believe there's something here after he essentially redshirted. And then Calvin Austin's obviously the other one worth a mention. If you can get DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson in the slot, Austin on the outside, because I just think that speed plays a little better on the outside potentially.
Yeah, I think he's a better Z fit a lot of the time, and it's despite his lower height and weight. Like I think he can do that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's viable, right? Like I don't think that's a great receiver group, but I think that's viable.
Yeah, I think the problem that I think a lot of people are having with it is obviously having Pickens versus not having Pickens. If it's just those two options, which again they're going to probably add someone to the room. We'll see who that is,
Mhm.
but obviously it's better to have George Pickens on the field than not having him on the field, right?
Yeah.
It's just it is like realistically, but this is an offense that clearly wants to run the football a lot, wants to be able to attack down the field in select situations, right? Regardless of who the quarterback is.
Mhm.
Adding Caleb Johnson, you hope the offensive line gels in year 2 of all these guys being together, hopefully, especially Fatanu getting his first real shot there at right tackle. So you hope that the run game can carry this offense a lot of the way. and that the passing game can be complementary for the most part. Even if Rodgers shows up, like, do we really want Aaron Rodgers in 2025 carrying the offense? I don't. I don't know if I
No.
want him carrying the offense for anyone in any year in the last couple of years. But besides the point, that's what this identity of this team is going to be. And I think that not having Pickens doesn't guarantee that the passing game can't be effective. It just might not be as explosive overall.
And it probably, I mean, obviously this is a locker room move in some ways.
For
Like it's
sure.
also a contractual move because they didn't want
Yeah.
to pay two big time receivers. But like you said, I think that's a really good point. Arthur Smith wants to run the ball. He
Yeah.
typically silos targets to one receiver. That's kind of always been his MO.
Mm-hmm.
That receiver is obviously going to be DK Metcalf after you pay him $35 million a year.
Right.
So there just may not be that many targets to go around to George Pickens. So I think that's an overlooked aspect of this trade. Like, yes, you're losing George Pickens, but now you're losing a wide receiver too in an offense that just isn't going to throw the ball a ton. So I don't know that you're losing a receiver who's certainly capable of 1,000-yard seasons and double-digit touchdown years. But I don't know that was the production you were actually going to get. Now to the next question, you mentioned some of the names.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone jump out to you? Like Amari Cooper right now doesn't do it for me. I'm more into that than Robert Woods, I think. Gabe Davis, I mean, if he's getting cut by Jacksonville, that kind of is a sign things aren't going great for him in his career trajectory. Right. Who jumps out to you, Shayne?
I do think as much as his season last year was certainly bad by his standards, really anybody's standards, especially for a starting receiver, Amari Cooper is somebody that I think is worth taking a flyer on at this point in free agency and in the process, because if he can at least give you a little bit of the route running and veteran savvy on the outside that they don't really have on the roster, because DK, as good as he is not really his MO either. And he needs to be the guy that's the big explosive play threat anyway. So finding someone who is not quite as washed up, I would say, as Robert Woods, at least you hope not, to come in and fill that role would be something that would make sense for them in the short term, right? To try to win as much as they can this year. Do I think it's going to be the end of the world if they don't add someone like that? No. But knowing the Steelers, they're going to do something like that just to kind of up the floor of this team for 2025. So that would be who I'd be looking at.
Yeah, ultimately, you mentioned, like, is it the end of the world? No, because this team isn't winning a Super Bowl regardless.
No, they're not.
So, like, to what end?
Add a veteran to make receiver? The offense work better, I guess, a little bit. I don't know. To me,
to get a better look at
yeah.
your, at Mason Rudolph, who you already cast aside once before, or, get a good look at Aaron Rodgers. Like, it just, to me, this team has such a low ceiling on it. It already did before this move.
Right.
But it looks like they're signaling, hey, we actually have a long-term view to this thing. And that is very comforting to me.
It is. Yeah.
Because I've been begging for that for a really long time. So this is the first sign of that. Before we get to that, you mentioned washed up, and you already brought his name up.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers. Ray Fittipaldo went on 93.7 The Fan Morning Show today and said he felt that this move was independent of anything to do with Rodgers, and it has really no bearing, and that they'll probably, make another move if they bring Rodgers in to get another veteran, be it Amari Cooper or a trade for Allen Lazard or, one of his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel the same way? I mean, obviously he's reporting and we're just trying to view it from a 30,000 foot view.
Right.
I think if you're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers, you probably want to give him as many weapons as possible. So if I was 75% sure before, which is probably a decent number, that the Steelers were going to sign Aaron Rodgers, 65 now, 60, where are you? Confidence level, did this drop it?
I don't really think it dropped it too much because I think, like he reported, this doesn't seem like something that is related to the Aaron Rodgers situation, because no matter what happens with him, whether he signs, whether he doesn't, it is a 1 year, in my opinion, thing. It's not going to be a 2-year thing even. It's certainly not going to be 3. They can't make decisions about a player whose contract is up at the end of this year and is going to be a long-term piece if he signed based on whether Aaron Rodgers shows up or not. Like, that's just not good business. And I don't think that is what they're doing, right? Now, whether or not he wants to come here less because they don't have George Pickens now, that's something that only Aaron Rodgers could tell you. And Aaron Rodgers isn't telling anyone anything of note. So that's speculation on my part at this point. But I do think without Pickens on the roster, obviously it does lower the ceiling of this offense for 2025. And if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback in 2025, why bother doing that if the ceiling is now lower than it would have been? It does feel like at least a little bit like kind of like you said, where maybe they're less committed to trying to make that happen, and they're truly just going to say, "Hey, if you want to come here and not make us start Mason Rudolph, great. If you don't, we're already planning for 2026 anyway. We'll make it work this year. We'll win our 9 to 10 games anyway because of the Steelers, and we'll move on." So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I think the 9 to 10 win thing is where I want to go next.
Yeah.
Because Mike Tomlin, voodoo magic, and everything that is, and he won. He didn't have a losing season when it was Mason Rudolph then, who was, I think,
A
a
worse
worse player
player.
than
Yeah, worse
Mason
player
Rudolph
now.
now, I'm gonna say, and Duck Hodges. You gotta squint. Maybe the defense is elite.
Maybe, yeah.
There's the talent on it for it to be a top 5 group in the NFL, and they're certainly spending like it should be. Mike Tomlin has not proven to be able to produce a top 5 defense in the NFL in a long time with very high-end talent. I think it's possible now, and it was possible before because you were going to maybe head into the year with Mason Rudolph as your starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's possible that the floor is now 7, 6. Where's the ultimate floor for you on this team? Like Mike Tomlin, voodoo magic aside,
Yeah.
what is your outlook and where do you see the floor being? Because I do think it got lower.
It is lower when you remove a player that's as talented as Pickens. And I
Yeah.
think, again, that's the issue because for me, the reason I'm not as stressed out as some people that I know personally and some fans might be about the offense is because I know how this team operates. Like they just make stuff work anyway because there's something wrong with the rest of the league somehow, and they just always find a way to, like, they beat the Ravens once or twice a year for no reason. They beat random teams for no, like, they do that. But aside from that, right?
Yeah.
This could easily be, if you just told me anyone was coaching this team and just showed me the roster, this team could definitely lose 10 games, right? Like they definitely could, because the offense truly is, especially because the best player on it is a player that just got traded away from the team that he was playing for and got a huge contract, and is a player that could at any point, because of his skill set and his size, fall off at any moment. Not saying he's going to early on, but you get my point. You have an offensive line that played well at times last year, but has a bunch of technically new faces because a lot of them didn't get to play much at either at all or the position they're going to play in 2025. Like, there's plenty of reasons you could poke holes in every part of the roster, but because I know who's coaching the team, it makes it really hard for me to say that they are going to lose more than maybe it's an 8-9 and lost, like actual losing season. That's certainly within range here, but to me, that's kind of the floor with him coaching.
Yeah, I agree because, and it's something that frustrates me so much because I think it limits the ceiling on a good Steelers team, right?
Yeah.
Is that Mike Tomlin tries to distill every game down to the turnover margin, obviously, and that's just making a game decided by 3 or 4 plays instead of, Ben Johnson this offseason was talking about how he no longer thinks that turnover margin is the most important factor in winning football games. It's passing EPA, EPA per passing play.
Right.
And I certainly agree with that philosophy, and I'm certain the numbers bear it out, or he wouldn't be saying something like that. But you just want to be hunting high-end production in the passing game to try to win football games. That's not what the Steelers are going to do, regardless of, Mason Rudolph, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes. Mike Tomlin is just going to play turnover margin games. So ultimately, I agree. I don't think the bottom's going to drop out because Pickens is gone. It's a move I really like. Quickly, we don't have to. I want to talk a little bit about, like, is this long-term planning? But I think we've already hit that, and we're going to hit that with the quarterbacks. Pickens fit in Dallas.
Yeah.
I love it.
I do too, because that's the problem with this, right? Is like, if George can get his head on straight, right,
he'll be fantastic.
He'll be awesome, and they won't pay him though because they'll have no money because they still have to pay, like, Parsons, whatever. But no, like, he will be fantastic because what does CeeDee Lamb do best at the NFL level? We found out. Absolutely annihilate people out of the slot, like, to the point where it's like, why are you even bothering to cover him? Like, almost to that point, right? And if Dak's back healthy, like the offensive line, if it settles down with the pick of Tyler Booker at guard to kind of settle that thing down, they could be really, really good on offense. They
Mhm.
really could, because Pickens, again, he gives them what they an even better version, in my opinion, even with the factoring in of like maybe there's a few games where he just doesn't do anything because he's George Pickens, but a better version of Michael Gallup, where you
Yeah.
have a dude who
Oh, yeah.
could go down the field, win those contested catches. Occasionally, he'll give you like a 70-yard random slant for a touchdown, like whatever it is, right? That type of stuff paired with a CD Lamb is going to be really hard for defenses to deal with if they're both playing at a high level. So
Yeah, a better Michael Gallup, to me, a better Teteroa McMillan, who was,
yeah,
was obviously
possible
off the
there.
board when they drafted Tyler Booker, but was heavily mocked to Dallas as
Hmm.
just, you can get somebody on the outside that's going to win jump balls, win contested catches. We know Dak loves to throw those.
He does.
And he loves to trust his receivers. And I think that's a strength of Dak's game.
Yeah.
Now he can do that with Pickens and have CeeDee Lamb move into the slot. So quick on that, because we're a Steelers show, we want to be focused on the Steelers, but
Right.
I do think Pickens can have a monster season in Dallas, and I will not regret this trade 1%, because I see the vision for the Steelers. I
Hmm.
see kicking the can down the road, and you want to build up ammo to go get a quarterback. You don't want to be paying 2 wide receivers when Arthur Smith is your offensive coordinator. Should you be making long-term decisions around Arthur Smith being your offensive coordinator? That's neither here nor there.
No.
Maybe it's everywhere,
No.
but
But
I ultimately see the vision of this move, and I just wanted to be done with the George Pickens experience. So even if he has 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns, I'm not going to be losing any sleep over it. I just think he's a great fit in Dallas, and then they'll have to deal with his contract situation, and they won't deal with it well, because they never do,
no.
because Jerry Jones is running that thing down there. So I'm not going to lose any sleep about it, but I do think that Pickens is going to be really good for the Cowboys.
I do too. Yeah. Just final note. Like the problem is, and I'll equate this to another NFC East team that let a player go, not in via trade, but for agency. Saquon Barkley was amazing for the Eagles last year, right?
Mhm.
Awesome, unbelievable, wins the Super Bowl, whole 9 yards. For people who were mad at the Giants for not re-signing him, he wasn't gonna do that in New York, guys. I'm sorry. I get it. You want to dump on the Giants. You should. They're not good at this thing, right?
Yeah.
They're very much not. However, if you want to come here and tell me that it was because Saquon Barkley didn't play for them anymore, I can't get there with you, man. Like Pickens isn't gonna do what he's like. If he has a huge season with Dallas, it probably wasn't happening with the Steelers. So I'm not going to stress over it either way. So I agree with you there.
I absolutely love that, and I love that point about Barkley, because
Yeah,
I just
like
it was confounding all season. Everyone just
like,
dumping on the Giants
do you
for
think
letting
he
him
was
go.
going to run for 2,000 yards for the Giants? Like, did you think that was going to happen? It wasn't. I'm
Have
sorry.
you seen that offensive situation? Like, it would have been the first 6 years of his career all over
Yeah,
again. Like,
literally, it'd have been so funny. But yeah, so for sure.
all right. Before we get into the quarterbacks, Shayne, you can look in the chat, see if we have anything good. But if you're in the chat, if you're watching this show, you're hanging out with us, if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Still Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Still Curtain podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, but especially on YouTube, so you can hang out and watch us on Mondays and Wednesdays. We really appreciate your support. Shayne, anything worth noting in the chat?
Not right now. No, we're pretty caught up on that. So we'll see if we get some about this quarterback conversation. So
Absolutely. We want to hear your 2026 quarterback takes. We did the early work so we can give you a look ahead. Everyone always says next year's draft class is going to be better.
always
It isn't always better. This one is going to be at least deeper. I don't know exactly that there's going to be somebody better than Cam Ward. I really liked Cam Ward in this draft class,
right.
but the number 2 option is going to be better than Jackson Dart. I can assure you that.
Yeah.
This is a pretty deep quarterback class in 2026. And I want to start with who won't be in it and who we're not going to include in this, and who we didn't put in the thumbnail, even though maybe more people would have clicked on this live stream a little bit.
We might have, but it's fine.
Arch Manning.
Yeah.
He's not coming out.
No.
If the Mannings had played this another way, maybe I would agree with the thought that he's coming out. We've only seen, I believe, 2 starts from him, about like 90
starts,
throws. He sat behind Quinn Ewers for a second season last year, happily.
Yeah.
And probably shouldn't have been thrilled about it. Like, he could have made a fuss. Quinn Ewers A very flawed player. I think a better one when healthy is rarely ever healthy, was not healthy all year, and was a disaster down the stretch of the season.
Yeah.
I'm fully willing to admit that. I'm kind of a Yourish guy, sneaky a
I
little
know.
bit.
Yeah. Me and Josh are very far apart on that
We
one,
are
which is
very
very
far apart
fun,
on
which
Quinn
is very
Ewers.
funny, but it's
If
fine.
Quinn
Yeah.
Ewers didn't have a torn oblique, I think we would have seen a different player. But
Right. Right.
regardless, he did. And Arch Manning made absolutely no fuss. He did not transfer from Texas heading into the year when he knew Ewers was coming back. He's not going to leave after 1 year as a starter. We've seen so many quarterbacks in the NFL have success when they have 30, 40, even Bo Nix, 50 starts at the
Yeah.
collegiate level. It's just so valuable. That extra experience is so valuable. You know who knows that? The Manning family.
Yeah.
They're
A little
not
bit.
going to rush this thing. They're not going to they're not going to speed up his development in a way that's detrimental. Even if Arch Manning is fantastic, maybe if he blows everyone away and wins the Heisman, maybe. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't even know. There's just not a lot to evaluate right now.
Yeah.
And he torched, I think it was Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
this is not going up against high level SEC competition. And Sark didn't trust him to replace Ewers, who was hurt. Like, we need to cool our jets and pump the brakes on the Arch Manning discussion. Him being at the top of way too early 2026 mock drafts. I understand what you're doing. I
Right.
understand what the job is, everyone that's doing that,
We know.
but you don't believe it. And he's not going to be in the class. So we're not going to talk about him today. We are going to talk about some quarterbacks that are going to be in the class. Shayne, any thoughts on Arch before we go?
Just that I'm really excited to see what he's all about because I do think from the limited sample size, I think the tools are there. I think
Mm-hmm.
obviously the bloodline is there. You love the athleticism with him, which is something you didn't get from the Manning brothers. It's more of a throwback to their dad or his grandfather in this case. More that type of play style. So I'm very excited to see what he does. But I do think you're right that unless he has a phenomenal season and the team picking one is a team that they want him to go to, maybe something like that. Like the stars would have to align, in my opinion, for him to come out because he just doesn't have to. Like really, like because you can
No.
look at like, does he need the money? No, because he can get paid whatever he wants in Texas. Also, his family is the Manning family. He's not going to go hungry. Hate to break it to everybody, money probably doesn't matter too much to this kid because they could just be like, here, just have some until you
Yeah.
get drafted, whatever. There's just not really a reason for him to come out unless it just all lines up perfectly for where he wants to be. So, just for now, I wouldn't worry about Manning in 2026.
The quarterbacks we are going to worry about.
Yeah.
This is my rankings going into the year. We're going to work off of these are, I won't say they're consensus, but I think something of a consensus is forming a little bit around the top of this class.
Yeah.
I think Cade Klubnik is the one that you see either really high or much lower. But we're going to work off of my list. You can give your rankings, Shayne, but I want to just do this to talk about the guys.
Right.
So this is my way too early 2026 quarterback rankings. And it starts with Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. There are ugly interceptions. There are just plays when you go, what did you see? What are you doing? The South Carolina interception late in the second half. There was just an underneath corner that just dropped right underneath the route and he threw it right to him. But it is a huge but. This dude has a rocket launcher of a right arm. He's got a quick release. He's got a really repeatable motion, which I really trust. He can throw off platform. He's not a scrambler. He's not a runner, but he can really move in the pocket and he can buy extra time. He had a 9.8% pressure to sack ratio, which is really high level.
Yeah.
If you can cut out those mistakes, he's entering his fifth year of college, right? He was at LSU. He was an Ed Orgeron recruit who sat behind Jaden Daniels and learned, and he's shown flashes. I think there's a ton of talent there. I really like Nussmeier, and heading into 2026, he's my number one quarterback in the 2026 class. What say you?
Josh, I hate to do this to you, my friend. I watched a good bit of Nuss last year because I thought he may enter the draft, right?
Yeah.
So I have experience with him more so than really everyone on this list except for another name we'll talk about because I covered him for all of last year. So I've seen every throw he made. With Nuss, I agree that there's a lot to like about him, especially as a true like pocket manipulator, pocket
Mhm.
passer type, right? Where he's not going to make a ton of mistakes in the pocket. He's not going to invite pressure and take sacks. You had, I think, maybe the first or second lowest overall sack rate in college football last year as well, not just pressure to sack rate. So
Mhm.
just really doesn't get sacked. He gets rid of the ball. He has the throwing motion you talked about that allows him to do those things. I find myself having hangups in two specific areas with him that people will disagree on depending on who you ask. One,
Okay.
I think the arm is okay. I don't think
Really?
it's spectacular. I really don't. Like there is
I think
moments
it's
where he flashes
good.
it. Like there's moments where he flashes it, but it feels like on certain throws he doesn't have enough oomph to get it there with the velocity that I want you to. I think he can
Okay.
really put a loft on and get it down the field, but the
Yeah.
velocity on certain throws is kind of lacking for me. Now he can improve that because he is a
Mhm.
player that is going to have a chance to go back in the lab, get ready. He's just the slighter frame. If he can add a little bit more muscle to his frame, maybe that'll help him a little bit in that area. But to me, there's guys whose arm I like a little bit more, and just the decision making, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes he does stuff from like, man, I've seen too many guys do that crap in college, man. If you don't clean that up, now again, he's going to have the opportunity to, which is why I'm glad he didn't come out in this class. Because even
Agree.
though he would have been drafted, I think pretty early because of the lack of guys,
Mhm.
I think that he wouldn't have had the opportunity to go back and fix some of this stuff and maybe get drafted higher. So for me, I'm hopeful for him, but I do have some reservations with him right now. So
On the velocity thing, because like he can I think we agree he can push it downfield.
yeah,
Like
he
he
has
can
the ability to get it
really
down
good
the
deep ball
field. Yeah.
thrower. That's not always an arm strength thing, but I think he can push it downfield. Think he can hit throws outside the numbers, even when he's off platform. I do think if you have concerns about the velocity, I think the quickness of the release and a
It
lot of
helps him a
the
lot.
anticipation he throws with,
Yeah.
I think he counteracts that. To me, he counteracts that certainly, and I feel good about the arm. What my reservations would be is just the ceiling argument, because if you
For
aren't
sure.
that high level decision maker, and maybe we'll see it this year, I'm really hopeful that we will. I think
That's
we
the key
will.
for him. Yeah.
But if you're making those types of mistakes and you're not Lenoris Sellers, who we're going to
Yeah.
talk about in a little
Yeah.
bit,
Right.
who's 6'4" and is going to run like a 4.4 4.3, and just one
Yeah.
of the aliens, right?
Right. Mhm.
Nussmeier's not going to be one of the Allens, one of the Mahomes. Like he's going to be a half tier below that, and to be that, you have to be a Joe Burrow decision maker, a
Yes.
Joe Burrow with
Another
the
LSU
vision.
guy as well, right? Like
Yes,
you have
and
to be very
anticipation.
similar. Yeah.
Yes, you have to be similar to that kind of player. And I think Nussmeier has like the pocket mobility and the negative play mitigation, which was Burrow's weakness coming out of LSU. He
Yeah.
did take sacks.
He
Like
just
he
didn't
did.
care because he would just, make it
No,
happen anyway. But
he wasn't worried
it's
about it.
true.
And
Yeah.
then whenever he was like, I need to not take sacks anymore, he just like turned a
Didn't. Yeah.
dial and
He
doesn't
just
take
didn't
sacks
take him
anymore.
anymore. Yeah. It's very funny.
Um,
But
so I don't know that Nussmeier can turn the dial and not throw bad interceptions anymore. But if he can, to me, I'd be comfortable taking him number 1 overall. I'd be
gotcha.
comfortable about the Steelers moving up to draft him, because while I don't think he can be maybe a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and I love taking big swings on tools,
Yeah.
I think there's a pretty good chance, this is all pending another year of film and another year,
Hmm.
a pretty good chance he could be a top 15 guy. And he's the type of guy who's probably going to hit his ceiling, right? You're
Right.
probably not going to swing and miss. You're going to feel pretty comfortable. You're going to sleep pretty good at night after you draft him in the top 10. So Nussmeier's my number 1. I don't think he has the highest ceiling, but I think he has the highest likelihood of hitting a pretty high ceiling. So that's why I have him there.
Yeah, which totally get. I'm looking to see some things from him that will help me. Because again,
Mhm.
he's not the type of quarterback I typically gravitate towards when I'm talking about like taking someone high, which is part of the problem for me.
Yeah, me
But
neither.
also, if you get to the level where you like a Joe Burrow did, or even close to that, with his ability to make decisions and get the ball out to where it needs to go, I still had Burrow comfortably number 1 in his class, despite the Herberts of the world and stuff like
Yeah.
that had more tools than him. So he can certainly get there. So
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote this article about like the way too early quarterback thing, and I said you're trying to compete with aliens right now in the
yes,
NFL.
very much so in the
And one of
AFC.
the best ways to do that is to get your own alien. And Nussmeier's not that, but I think he's probably the next best thing. He's my number 1. My number 2 is probably somebody who's not really an alien either, but has
No,
a
but
lot of similar traits,
yeah.
maybe has a bigger arm. I'm interested what you think about his arm. Drew Aller at Penn State.
Yeah.
The accuracy is inconsistent to me.
Mhm.
I think a lot of that is like he's bigger, he's got a lot of size, he's got long limbs. I think his footwork, he can overstride sometimes, and that makes him miss. But when he gets in rhythm, I love what this guy can do. He was hamstrung by just an abysmal wide receiver group last year.
It's
Just
not good.
so bad. And that led to, late interceptions against Notre Dame. I have no questions about his decision making. I think he just, has to up that risk at some point, and you got to try to trust a receiver at some point, and his receivers never rewarded him for that. But there are some concerns about like he's a good mover in the pocket. He can shed some tacklers and break out of sacks. Not elite. If you're not great with your accuracy and hitting all the layups, are you digging yourself out of a hole too often? I think he does a great job. Like when he has to get his hard hat and his shovel, that USC game, right? 2 fourth down conversions on that late touchdown drive. He's creating outside of structure and finding guys open. Like I love those aspects of his game, but the on schedule stuff, that scares me a little bit. And if you're playing in 3rd and 8 a lot, all right, like that's not my favorite thing. So what are your feelings about Aller, and where do you have him in this class?
I think, by the way, Nuss right now of the guys we're going to talk about, he would be 4th for me of the
Okay.
list that we're talking about. So, but there's not a ton
Fourth
separating. Like, what's up?
Fourth with you feeling like he's still a late first rounder, or fourth with
Oh,
second or third round
he'd
pick?
be a late. Like he's the type of guy that, assuming you don't see a huge leap from him, you
Mhm.
still take him in the first at some point because he should be able to give you starting caliber quarterback play, which like right off the bat, I think, which is worth a first round pick, obviously.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I have
yeah,
4 first rounders in this class
gotcha.
as of right now.
Fair enough.
But I
Yeah.
was just curious where you
Yeah,
saw
that's
him.
where I'm at too. Is 4. He's the last of that group, just
Mhm.
because again the ceiling unless he shows me more, which we talked about, it's kind of
Yeah.
in that range. But with Aller, he would be 3rd for me. I think the problem with him ultimately, and you kind of touched on it, is the decision making is good. The arm talent is really there. I think he has maybe one of the best arms in the class and overall in terms of just velocity, ability to layer throws, all that good stuff. Where he has problems is one, the accuracy is still not all the way there. It's much better than it was when he first started
Mhm.
as a
Much
freshman, right?
better.
Much better. So that's good that he's already improving that and hopefully continues to get better. But he just doesn't want to push the ball down the field the way he can. And I know a lot of
Mhm.
it is the offense was a little bit gimmicky because who was playing receiver for this team half the time? I couldn't tell you, and I covered the team last year. Like it's just not great there. Tyler Warren's kind of the offense because he was a freak and they just had to give him the
Mhm.
football. Like it was a really effective but a weird offense to judge him in as an NFL quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And he did show flashes of pushing the ball down the field when he was asked to, so he can do it. He just doesn't really. And until we get to see him do that, which maybe he will this year with some better receiver talent there, it looks like, and a different type of tight end room, right? But overall, like he has all the tools as a thrower, and I think he
Mhm.
has enough of the play extension stuff where he's not a great athlete, but he's big, he's tough. He'll get you tough yards as a runner when he has the opportunity
Yeah.
to. Like he'll do all that stuff for you. He just needs to get more aggressive, weirdly enough, which with a guy with the skill set, normally that's not the problem, right? Like normally you're not worried about that stuff, but his accuracy and the aggressiveness has to kind of come up a little bit for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're Mike Tomlin, you always say, "I'd rather say whoa than sick 'em," right? Like you don't want to, you want to rein that in, and that's the case with a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Um, don't blame the wide receivers from our Barley 18.
Yeah,
Don't blame the wide receivers. Franklin is a goofball and has no idea how to run an offense, but won't let his OCs alone. College Tomlin, I totally disagree. I think he absolutely handed the reins to Andy Kotelnicki.
for the
I
most part,
think
yeah.
you're totally free to rip James Franklin. But I think that was Kotelnicki's offense, and I think he did a great job running it.
Yeah,
But like you
overall.
said, it's super gimmicky. And it was the passing game, especially, was very gimmicky last year.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I'm interested specifically. They revamped that wide receiver room. This is a little bit niche college stuff, but I'm specifically interested. Kyron Hudson, the USC
Mhm.
transfer,
Right.
is like a contested catch. He's not as huge. He's 6'1", but he's a contested catch, physical, like jump ball winner.
Mhm.
I'm interested to see, is Aller going to trust him to
I
make
hope
those
so.
plays? Because Tyler Warren's kind of the only guy he would trust early in the
Yeah.
season. But I do think like in the Boise State playoff game, like Aller was throwing a lot of deep balls and trusting his wide receivers, and he just was not getting rewarded for it.
No, it
So
was not.
if some of that yardage comes to him, like then he looks like a guy who really does push it down the field. So I'm in on Aller. He's my number 2. So that's interesting that he's your number 3 and Nussmeier's your number 4. I'm guessing based off of your, interest in tools and looking for the toolsy guys,
Yeah.
Lenore Sellers is your number 1 quarterback.
He is. Obviously, I want to let you go first here to introduce him, but yeah, he is right now. Now, obviously, right now is the key word here, the operative word for both of us.
Yeah.
But yes, he is number 1 right now.
Lenore Sellers, rising redshirt sophomore at South Carolina, first-year starter last year as a redshirt freshman, kind of under the radar, like not a huge, massive recruit, and just down the stretch exploded. South Carolina was good in the beginning of the year, but you didn't really know what the situation was with Sellers. I think he had an ankle injury that took him out of the LSU game, I believe.
Yeah,
if I'm just pulling that off memory. But then he was lights out down the stretch. He's 6'4", 240, and runs incredibly well.
Yeah.
Probably as well as Jalen Milroe in this year's class.
Bigger player too. Yeah.
Bigger player, and the frame to like actually handle that kind of beating in the NFL. Downhill runner, but he has like lateral movement and legitimate vision as a runner. That's really impressive for a quarterback. The passing, the tools are there. Are you reading things? Are you seeing things? Is that going to come along? Are you going to be Anthony Richardson? I don't know. That's a damning name to throw out, and I don't think he is. I think he's already a better college. I know he's already a better college quarterback than Anthony Richardson ever was. That was purely a tools thing. This is not purely a tools thing. Like Sellers could win the Heisman this year, and
I think he should be the favorite as of right now.
Yeah, and he is a legitimately good college quarterback right now. My thing with Sellers that I am in on Sellers. So this is not me.
Right.
I'm just hedging my bets a little bit. I think
fair enough. Yeah.
He has the highest ceiling in this class, bar none, like no doubt about it. I think Aller and Nussmeier are more likely to reach their ceilings.
Right.
So that's why I have them 1 and 2. And then Sellers 3, to me, he's a top 10, top 15 pick. You take him and you just take that huge home run swing. I'd love the Steelers to take a home run swing like that. And with his rushing ability, it just lowers the bar he has to clear as a passer so tremendously. So tremendously. He's not going to be in 3rd and 8 as much as Drew Aller is, right? He's not going to have to get that hard hat and shovel and dig himself out of a hole because he has the 11-man run game, right, on 1st and 2nd down. And that just helps your running back. It helps everything. I think you're going to be able to build an efficient offense around Lenore Sellers to give him the time to develop as a passer. I love him. I'm so excited about him, but I just have some worries about, like, is he ever going to really get there? That if you're down late in a game and it is just true drop back and you're losing that element of the 11-man run game, what does it look like then? He's not a game script proof quarterback, and that concerns me. That's my only concern because I'm super excited about the traits.
Yeah, like, again, a lot of agreement from my side of things. He's my number 1 quarterback primarily because I saw enough of him last year as a passer at a very young age, his first year starting.
In the SEC.
Exactly, also against the SEC competition. For me to think that if he can improve enough in just this year as a passer, he could justifiably come out and be the first overall pick. Like, that's the type of talent we're talking about here. Right? And you mentioned Anthony Richardson. He has the chance to be what people were hoping Anthony Richardson was going to be. And that's not to say that Anthony Richardson is already over, but I mean, he is going to be in a quarterback battle with potentially Daniel Jones. So take that for what you will. But, assuming he doesn't work out, what people thought Richardson could be is who I think Lenore Sellers is, or at least can be, right? Like, and there's 3 things I kind of look at with him that make me confident that he's at least going to reach enough of his ceiling where he should be in contention for the first pick in the draft. One is he had a surprising amount of snaps on tape where despite his athletic gifts, he would scramble out and then keep his eyes downfield and throw the ball down the field. Like
Mhm.
that's something that's is a trademark of quarterbacks like him that they don't do often enough at the college level. And then you never see them do it in the NFL either. And you worry that, okay, well, is he going to be able to just make everybody miss like he does in college, right?
Yeah.
He will fire the ball down the field off of those scramble movements. Like he does do that, which is really good for him. Again, the tools as a runner, just phenomenal, right? Like
Mhm.
it's ridiculous. There was a play, I think it was against Vanderbilt, where he scrambled. And this is another example of him keeping his eyes downfield. He like broke like 2 sack attempts, ran outside of the pocket, and then fired a ball down the field. That I'm like, there's not many dudes on the planet in the NFL or in college who can do that. Like there just isn't,
Yeah.
right? And that's why you take guys like this high. Now, again, he's shown enough to me where I'm like, okay, you do have to improve in a lot of areas. The biggest thing for me is turnover worthy play percentage. It was almost 5%, similar to his big time throw rate. Those
Mhm.
numbers got to start getting a lot farther away from each other next year for me to want him to come out as a sophomore, right? So we'll see how much he can improve on that. But as long as he looks better than he did last year, which I'd be surprised if he doesn't, I think the NFL is going to be like, yeah, dude, you got to come out because you're going to go real high. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at with him.
Yeah. On the concerns, because I think we've laid out like the best case scenario, the
Right.
tools, everything we
Hmm.
love. 3.31 second time to throw.
Yes. Yeah.
That gets him into trouble sometimes. On
Hmm.
dropbacks, over 2.5 seconds last year, which accounted for 66% of his total
A
dropbacks.
lot of them.
Sellers had a 20% pressure to sack ratio, pretty high, a lot higher than we were talking about with Nussmeier at 9.8, and 15 turnover worthy plays per PFF.
Yes.
Like that worries me because you, as a scrambler, as a big quarterback, you need to be a negative play mitigator,
Yeah.
and he's not in the same way that other big quarterbacks are.
Right.
Right? That's what Josh Allen's like. One of his best, his real superpowers now is just he never really takes negative plays. He never puts. I mean, he doesn't really put the ball in harm's way anymore,
Not as much,
and
no, especially last
because
year.
the way he can scramble, he doesn't take sacks. And that's what you need to do at the NFL level. And Sellers gets himself into trouble. That worries me. But if he can just stay on time, in rhythm more often, on the dropbacks under 2.5 seconds, so like the on schedule in rhythm
Mhm.
dropbacks, he's averaging 7.6 yards per attempt, which is not amazing, but he's good.
Yeah, good number.
74.6% completion percentage. And I love that, right? Like he's some of that screens, like there's some noise in that,
But still,
but
yeah.
when he's playing on schedule, he's legitimately good as a pocket passer. He
Mhm.
just needs to do it more. So then he can use his legs to mitigate negative plays instead of getting himself into trouble by scrambling or bailing out of the pocket. Like I think that's a real concern with him. But there are real concerns about every prospect, especially heading into the year before their draft year, or maybe even the year before their draft year with Sellers, because he still has a lot of eligibility left. But this is a player I'm really excited about.
Yeah, it's hard not to be with a guy that runs like this, looks like this. This is what like if you're building a player in college football. Now that we have a bad college football 25, this is
Yeah,
what you want this guy to look like. So that's just hard not to kind of value a ton. So
this is a player now at number 4 that I don't know is being talked about as much. I know he's not being talked about as much as the other guys in this group, but I love him. I love his toughness. I love the way he throws with anticipation. I love the way he doesn't turn the football over. His season ended on an interception, but he typically does not put the ball in harm's way. You talked about Sellers keeping his eyes downfield. Sam Levitt keeps his eyes down. Like he is as a scrambler, he does not scramble to run, but as a creator out of structure, like he is always just hunting big plays downfield. I love his game. I think he's accurate. I think he throws with anticipation. I think he's got certainly enough arm. Like it's not amazing, but it's enough arm to threaten outside the numbers and to push the ball vertically. And he layers the ball well. Like I just really like Sam Levitt. Last year was his first year as a starter. He
mhm.
transferred from Michigan State. I think he's a former 4-star. He was in that loaded 2023 class
Mhm.
that's, with Arch and everybody. And he was kind of an afterthought in it. To me, he is my QB4 heading into the year in the 2026 class. And I love Levitt's tape. I love the 3rd and 14 scramble against Texas in the Peach Bowl when he took a huge hit to get the first down. Like, it's moxie, but then it's also like some legitimate tools, and he's legitimately advanced as a passer.
Yeah, I did watch a good bit of Levitt last year because of the Arizona State hype and all that
Mhm,
was going on with them, and I do like him.
mhm.
I just again, like,
It's
not
a
that he
tools
doesn't,
thing.
not even so much that, it is a little bit of that, but he does have, like, as a runner, especially, really good tools. Like, he's
Yeah,
a very good runner, he's an effective runner. He had 34 missed tackles for us last year, which is a great number for a quarterback.
yeah.
So, like, he can do stuff with his legs. I think he's a little small.
Mhm.
I do, which I
6'2", 210,
yeah,
which
and
is 10 pounds heavier than Garrett Nussmeier, who
right.
you also don't love.
As much. I will say I would guess he's closer to 6 foot even if I had to guess. We'll see what he
Listed,
measures
yeah.
it right. Like his actual height and weight. Like I'm assuming it's
Mhm,
a little over 6 foot, a little over 200. But again, I think the arm is good enough. I do think that the accuracy is certainly there. It's spotty at times, and he's a young player, so that certainly can get better. I just wonder, is he one of these guys that tops out as like a guy that should go at the end of the first, early second, a guy that you hope can develop into a starter, but maybe ends up as a really, really nice, like effective backup because the scrambling ability and the accuracy.
mhm.
That's what I worry about a little bit with him, but there is a lot to like with him. I wonder if he's going to end up being one of those guys that ends up in 2027's class because of the fact that this might be a really, really great class and he might
Yeah,
kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit. So he would be 6 for me of the guys that I've taught, like I've watched a little bit of, but
mhm.
mostly just because some of these guys are just like either freaks or or they're just more physically talented than he is at this point. So
Yeah, absolutely, and I there's no disagreement on the tools and the ceiling stuff. I think if you got him with a savvy play caller, like, I
mhm.
think he'd be an excellent Brock Purdy type, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
and
That same type.
that's something of an insult in that, like,
Depending
system
on who you
quarterback
ask, yeah.
a system quarterback, game manager, whatever, but Brock Purdy might also get, like, $50 million a year.
He might. He very
So,
might.
if you pair him with the right head coach, I
Mhm.
really think there's something there with Levitt. What I loved, we don't have to stay on Levitt nearly as long. To me,
Right.
he's a first rounder. Like, I have a late first round,
Which I think
early
is
second
totally fair
kind of grade on
with
him
his
right now.
floor, yeah.
Um, when kept clean, and Levitt was really good under pressure. He didn't take a lot of sacks. He's shifty in the
Yeah,
pocket,
he
man. Like,
is.
he'll make legitimate like jump cuts behind the line of scrimmage and still deliver the ball downfield. But when kept clean, he got the ball out in 2.41 seconds with 19 touchdowns to 3 interceptions
Yep.
and had 0 turnover worthy plays on dropbacks of fewer than 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
Like,
Very
that
efficient
is
passer that way.
clean quarterbacking. And some of that is the Kenny Dillingham super, like, he's not like a super spread guy, but he has a lot of spread stuff and
Mhm.
horizontal throws. But there are a lot of real legitimate throws he makes that Levitt makes in that offense. And I really like him. I like the numbers. I like the tape. And I'm in on him as my QB4. You ready to move on to the next one, or you have any more thoughts?
No, again, like, he's a guy that I'm really excited to see more of this year, but I am
Mhm.
wondering again if, like, partially because of the fact he's a younger player, partially because of how good this class could end up being, I wonder if we end up talking about him in 2027 instead of 2026, and that might ultimately be the best thing for him, right? Because
Yeah.
we know Arch, or at least we expect Arch to be in that class, but who knows about anyone else? So that might be what happens with him. But
So we're heading to my QB5.
okay,
We've hit your 1, 3, 4, and 6.
yes, yes. So this guy coming up is 2 for me right now.
Okay.
So yeah,
I want you to lead off on Cade
okay,
Klubnik
all right,
because I'm much lower, and I don't even know if I don't know. I have a complicated relationship with Cade
that's
Klubnik, and
fair.
maybe I've just
Okay.
watched too much Cade Klubnik,
Mhm.
but go ahead on Cade.
Well, I think that's a good thing to mention because if you would have told me 9 months ago
Oh,
who I
yeah.
thought would have been a quarterback that I would have drafted highly in 2026, and you told me that I said Cade Klubnik, I would have probably looked at you like, "You mean the dude who can't play at Clemson? Like, is that who you're talking about?" But his season last year, man, because I didn't expect this because I started watching him a little bit at the end of the season because he also could have, I think, entered this year's draft
Mhm.
as well, and didn't. And I think for good reason because he wants to build off the season he had. But
Yeah.
to me, he has the right combination of enough arm talent, enough accuracy, the athleticism really popped last year. Like he has some
Mhm.
big time runs. Now, he's not Lenore Sellers, he's not John Miller, he's not any of those guys as far as athletes or runners, but super effective runner, can finish runs, can actually run away from some people as a
Yeah.
quarterback. Like he has the combination of all the tools that also and he also has enough of a floor to me where he kind of elevates himself ahead of the Owlers and the Nussmeyers of the world, but doesn't quite get to Sellers, right? Because his ceiling is too high for me to really have anyone ahead of him currently. And so we see
Mhm.
these guys play this year. But he feels like a guy that if you drafted him in the early part of the first round, gave him a little bit of time to sit, and then allowed him to come in and just kind of do his thing, he could be a really, really effective quarterback early on and for a long time.
2023 bowl season, Klubnik had been the starter all year at
Yep.
Clemson. And with Garrett Riley's first year as the offensive coordinator at Clemson, Lincoln Riley's little brother, and Clemson got down to Kentucky in their bowl game, and Klubnik needed to make like a late drive. And I was sitting there like, does he think he can complete these 5-yard passes all the way down the field? Like, he doesn't have enough time.
Yeah.
But all he would do that year, that whole season,
Mhm.
is just 5 to 10 yard quick throws, like tons of quick outs. And he didn't have a great receiving core. And that offense was weird. And I think Garrett Riley was still like figuring a lot of stuff out coming over from TCU. And he had Max Duggan before, which was like a weird, different QB run,
Yeah, Max
chuck
Duggan,
deep
man.
ball thing. Like, and Klubnik was just not good that year. Like, this is
No.
a former 5-star guy,
Right.
and he was the butt of a lot of jokes coming out of that season. And then he played Georgia in the first week last year
Mhm.
and got clobbered. And
Yeah,
the whole team got clobbered. And to me, he's a pressure sensitive quarterback. And Georgia got to him and overpowered his offensive line. And he just didn't have many answers.
right.
But then the rest of the year, man,
Yeah.
he's breaking off runs on zone reads, like 60-yard touchdown runs. He's chucking deep balls. Was it the NC State game? There was one
Mhm.
game where he had like 4 touchdowns at halftime and
Oh, yeah.
basically sat the rest of the way because he was just chucking deep balls all over the place and hitting long touchdowns. And I was like, who is this quarterback
Yeah.
and what has he done with Cade Klubnik?
Yeah.
So I'm just conflicted about what player exists.
Totally fair.
Ultimately for me, like, I think there's enough arm there. There is enough athleticism, right? But I worry about the pressure sensitivity. He's not that big of a guy either. He's, the same size as Levitt and the same size as Nussmeier. So if I
He
like those
does look a
guys,
little bigger to me on tape, especially weight-wise, than like better filled
yeah, a
out,
little thicker.
but they're
And
probably similar sizes though,
yeah,
realistically.
I really see a lot of Bo Nixie stuff with him. And
Just
that's not a
depending on who
bad
you
thing.
ask, yeah, might not.
That's not necessarily a bad thing
Yeah.
because Bo Nix was probably the second best rookie in that class last year.
Yeah, on the field so far, yeah.
So if you can pair Klubnik with the right offensive coordinator that's gonna, get the ball out of his hands quickly and run, to me, you need like something kind of RPO heavy. Then okay, in. But I'm just worried. Levitt's not a tools guy. Nussmeier's not like a big tools guy. But with Klubnik, I'm more worried about the tools. And I think it's because of the pressure sensitivity that I see on tape.
Right.
And it's because the way he's performed against like a Georgia defense at the beginning of last year. He
Right.
played well against Texas in the
He
college
did.
football playoff
Yeah,
game.
he did.
He played well. He created off schedule. Like, he did a lot of stuff. That Texas secondary wasn't like, Texas had a pretty soft schedule last year. Their defense ranked very highly. I don't know that it was as good as
They
we
had some
wanted.
standout players, but I think as a
Yes,
unit,
but
they weren't.
yeah, Jahdae Barron
Yeah.
in the secondary, and they had a
Kuba,
lot of pass rushers,
yeah.
but I don't think it was Georgia level defense. That game is just seared into my mind and is a big concern. So I'm lower on Klubnik, but I understand why you're in on it. And if I had just seen last season and
It'd
didn't
be
have
different,
2023
right.
in my mind, I
Yeah.
might be a lot higher on him.
Yeah, and again, that's the thing is I knew about him, but not as much as you did. So like I knew them like that guy can't really play, and then it's like, oh well, he seems to be able to play now, so that's cool
Yeah.
for me. But no, I totally like see because these guys also like Sellers is kind of in his own tier for me because of the potential that he has.
Mhm.
But the guys like 2 through 4 especially are kind of right in the same range for me. So any of these guys could kind of break out from each other and be the QB2 for now until I see these guys obviously play more. So
Yeah, I see Klubnik right now as like a second round guy, which means he'd be drafted in the first round. Like
yeah, for
I
sure.
won't
Like yeah,
I
because that's what
yeah,
happens.
I won't be surprised if he's a first round pick.
Right.
I just don't know how high the ceiling is. And I think I like, Nussmeier's arm and quick release better. I like Aller's physicality and toughness
Right.
and that better. I just love Sam Levitt, so maybe I
Mhm.
don't have a great argument, but I do think like he is really exceptional on schedule and a
Yeah.
really impressive negative play mitigator. But Klubnik is just he checks a lot of boxes, but doesn't blow me away in any one category. So that's why I have him at 5. And now we can move on to the other guys to look at and potential
Right.
risers. And I'll actually just let you have the floor because there's one guy you brought up, and let's talk about him first. Then we have 2 more that are more, kind of bigger names coming after him.
Right.
But bring up your guy and let me hear your case because I'm interested to hear it
Okay.
from an NFL perspective. Because from a college evaluation perspective, that which is what I come from sometimes
Yeah.
a little bit
You're
more,
definitely more
right?
of a
Like
college
I'm
guy.
more
Yeah.
locked in on the college stuff. Um, there's been a lot of question marks.
Yeah. Real quick before I jump into those names, with Klubnik,
Mhm.
I know this is obviously Steelers podcast. We're talking about
Yeah,
Steelers potential guys. If Klubnik were to come out next year
yeah,
and go somewhere early, I think it would make sense for it to be a team that might be in the market because if things don't go well this year, which I personally don't think they will, they might need to find somebody. He would make a great Miami Dolphin, in my opinion.
yes, yeah,
He would be really good in that scheme because he
mhm,
adds that mobility that Tua doesn't. Hopefully, his head stays on, unlike Tua's has so far,
yeah.
unfortunately. That would make a lot of sense, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think if he can get with the right play caller,
Mhm.
I'm really into that. And I was the same way with Bo Nix. I was a total Bo Nix hater, but I said if he ends up with Sean Payton, I was saying that all season. If he ends up with Sean Payton, I'm gonna look like an idiot. If he ends up with Sean Payton, I'm gonna look like an idiot.
Guess
And he
what?
ended up with Sean Payton, and he had a great rookie season.
Yeah.
I don't feel like an idiot yet
No,
because it was a
he has
lot
a
of
limited ceiling, and there's
yes,
gonna be stuff, but I know what you're saying there,
but
yeah.
he hit way better than he would have somewhere else.
For sure, for sure.
So I feel the same way about Klubnik.
Alright, but yeah, so the name that and this is my number 5 quarterback today,
Okay.
right? So that's where
Yeah.
I'm at with him. Aiden Childs out of Michigan State, is the name I want to bring up here. And for people who are Michigan State fans, even for people who watched a lot of college football last year, you might say, "Are you sure about that?" And I get that, right? Like, because some of the film is questionable. There's 3 main things with him for me that I
Mhm,
think if he can improve on, particularly, will make him a legitimate prospect in this year's class coming up. Now, again, he might end up being a guy that needs even another year past this year to kind of
mhm,
get into that first round territory if he's ever going to do it, right? But there's 3 things. One, he plays in an offense last year that had a lot of NFL concepts and a lot of things he's going to be asked to do at the NFL level that a
mhm.
lot of these guys don't get to do at the college level. A lot of true play action, a lot of stuff. He played under center at times. Like he did some stuff where I saw him execute NFL things at a level that most guys don't even have the opportunity to at the college level
Mhm.
because frankly they're not asked to. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Like that's not their fault. But it's nice, it's refreshing to see somebody be like, hard play action, find a guy over the middle of the field, deliver a strike. Like it just
Mhm.
doesn't happen a ton at the college
Yeah.
level anymore. So it's and maybe that's part of it for me. But like I saw him do that stuff. I think the arm is very good. I think he has the ability to make really any throw. I think the problem is just accuracy needs to improve. He had too many
Mhm.
misses high over the middle of the field. Bad stuff. Don't want to do that. He's got
Yeah.
to bring those throws down a little bit. Has solid frame. He's a little skinnier in the lower half, but he is a younger player. I think he can improve that. He's a really good athlete, not quite to the level of obviously like a Sellers or some of these other guys, but
Mhm.
he's similar to me in the sense of Klubnik, where I don't think the tools are overwhelming, but he has all of the NFL caliber tools you
Yeah.
need to be a starting quarterback and a really good one, right?
Mhm.
And this is the type of guy that I think if you can't get the big swing on a guy early, like if the Steelers just can't trade up or they pick too low or whatever it is, this is a guy that you might be able to get later in the first, even in the second round, who has all the tools required, like I said, to become a really good starting quarterback. So a name to kind of watch for me, I think.
Yeah, there needs to be some serious development, but
Yes, yeah,
he's in a tough situation.
he
Like that
is
is a
Michigan
rebuilding
State.
roster.
Yeah.
He came over with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. Like he was a highly
Hmm.
touted recruit. There are definitely tools there, and I do like what you mentioned about like hard play action and stuff like that. Like even DJ Uiagalelei, who fell off at Florida State, because I think that offense, he's not a good player, but that was also a terrible fit for him.
Right.
He kind of excelled at Oregon State running the offense under Jonathan Smith, who's now at Michigan State. So definitely one to keep an eye out for. The other two names we have on here to watch,
Yep.
Nico Iamaleava. Props to me, just saying, for nailing Uiagalelei and Iamaleava back to back. Pretty good
Yeah.
in the flow of things. Then I just did it twice. But Nico, complicated situation. NIL dispute with Tennessee. Josh Heupel says take a walk. He is a former 5-star. He was the $8 million man coming out of high school, right? Like he was the original NIL money grab guy.
Darling.
And I do
Yeah.
not blame him for that at
No.
all.
Yeah.
But then it got kind of ugly at Tennessee as he wanted to renegotiate heading into the spring. And now he's at UCLA for less money, higher cost of living. Like I'm not getting in the man's wallet, but it was a bad decision. And it was managed poorly from whoever was in charge of, his managing that for him, be it an agent, be it his parents, whatever.
Right.
He's at UCLA now. That's kind of where we are. There are a lot of tools. He's 6'6". He's athletic. He's a legitimate, pretty impressive runner, a long strider who can, really make up ground and run away from guys.
Kind of reminds me of Kaepernick as a runner in that.
Kind of like straight line.
Yeah, not like the shifty, but like just eats up ground like with the best of them. Like very much that type,
absolutely. Yeah. And he's got a huge arm. And he's loose as a thrower. Like I think he can throw off platform. I know he can throw off platform, but I just think he's really loose, and that gives you a lot of horsepower to drive the ball. But is the touch there? Not on deep balls. It's not. Like there were a ton of overthrows in that offense. The Josh Heupel offense. We talk about the Lane Kiffin offense with Jackson Dart like not being a real NFL offense. The Josh Heupel offense is even less of a real offense.
Somehow less of a real offense. Like it's actually really impressive that there's
it is like NFL. The evolution of what RG3 was running at Baylor under Art Briles, where it is super wide splits, heavy RPO stuff. You're making the decision pre-snap based on the box count, essentially like handing it off, or are you pulling it and throwing? Because of the wide hash marks, because you're allowed, offensive linemen are allowed to get 5 yards downfield on RPOs before you have to throw. And it's not a legal man downfield, or 3 yards, but they kind of give him 5. It's kind of a completely different sport, and he's doing something that is just not NFL applicable at all. And yet you can see the ability there. When he didn't have play action last year, I'm not going to go through the numbers. Like I wrote about this a lot last year. His numbers plummeted, man. It was so much worse because he needs that element of like holding guys in the box. And then you're just that offense, you're just throwing deep balls. And there were so many overthrows from him. And there were a lot of instances of late game questionable decision-making. Like I personally am not in on Nico. I think Tennessee would rather have Nico than Joey Aguilar, who was the UCLA quarterback, formerly at App State, who's now at Tennessee. They essentially did a trade.
Which is very funny, but one of the funniest things we've seen in a while. Yeah.
I kind of think there's not going to be that much of a drop-off. I like Aguilar a lot also. That's like a niche college thing. I don't like him for NFL stuff.
Right, but college player.
I think Nico could eventually be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
But I do think he's going to need another year and going to need to go back to school. I don't see him as a first-round pick next year, but there's alluring tools, so you might like him a lot more than I do.
Oh boy, don't I? No, I'm just kidding. I don't. No, I really, the problem with Nico is like, yes, I like tools, but you got to at least do something with him at some
Yeah.
point, right? And again, he has plenty of time if he wants to slow play this, if he wants to make his money in college, like he'll have time to do this. And I think at UCLA, not saying this, better program than Tennessee, but I think they're going to play whatever offense they run. It cannot be less.
Yeah.
It can't be less applicable to the NFL. Like, it's just not possible. It's not going to happen. So I think it'll be good for his development to go to a different school. But I do agree, like the whole process of getting out of Tennessee, very strange, not good vibes. Probably doesn't help his case currently as it stands, today on May 7th, 2025. But realistically, he has all the tools, more than enough tools. It really, and every way, runner, thrower, whole 9 yards. But he just, I don't know how any other way to say this. I think he's just not good right now. Like he's not. Like Joe Milton was better than him at Tennessee, in my opinion. His like statistically, and production wise.
Yes, yeah.
He was just as, if not better than him. And granted, Joe Milton's a freak who just is 24 and couldn't play really in college either. But the point is like we didn't see this huge jump from that offense at quarterback specifically, at least, right? That's not great. Like, it's just not.
No.
Like, and again, will he get better? Probably. Can he get good enough and show enough of the tools and the improvement to be a first-round pick in 2026? I have reservations about that. That's just kind of where I'm at. He's 7 for me of the 8 guys we're going to ultimately talk about today, because I do understand, like, yes, he has all the things you would want your quarterback to have from a just physical standpoint. He just got to show more of it at college before I can really rank him highly.
And the last thing on Nico, because we're doing this through a Steelers lens.
Yeah.
Oh boy, did he look cold in Columbus.
Oh boy. That was tough.
That whole Tennessee team looked cold, and they got run off the field and steamrolled by Ohio State.
Ready for that.
Everyone got steamrolled by Ohio State. Right?
To be fair,
that team was a rolling ball of chainsaws. After
Steelers quarterback Will Howard pushing the ball.
Yes, he didn't look cold. My boy Will did not look cold.
He looked all right.
But yeah, I don't think it would be a fit in Pittsburgh specifically, and I don't think he's somebody like they're amassing ammo to go trade up. I don't think they're going to need to trade up to get Nico if Nico does come out. But he's a name to watch as we enter this process, and maybe he'll be a riser. Another person who was a faller last year and will now need to re-rise, if that makes sense, because he was originally going to maybe be like a day 2 guy after his first year as a starter at Georgia. He's now at Miami. Carson Beck, your thoughts?
Carson Beck. When I was watching him for this year's class, because I thought, maybe he'd come out, and then I realized, oh no, he ain't coming out.
No,
he can't come out. Not after this. There's
no
way.
No way.
I had a hard time getting him into like top 6 of my quarterback rankings of this year's class, because I'm like, I see a guy who just quite simply isn't seeing the field right now. Like he just this is not happening for him, because he would throw just an absolute laser, and you're like, okay, and the next play he's like, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. I might as well have never played before. Like, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, this is Georgia. Like, there's no way you don't like, what I mean? There's no way you don't know.
And he was good the year before.
I know, that's good. Like, good enough that like people wondered if he was going to come out. Like, because he could have. Man, maybe he should have. Obviously going to Miami, it worked out for Cam Ward, so maybe it'll work out for him. I'm not 100% sure about that, but like he has a good arm. He does. Like his arm talent is there. I think the accuracy, especially 2 years ago, was there, right? That he was billed as this like pro ready, like out the box, can be a good starter for you. Maybe never going to be a great one, but a good player for you. Now it's like you got to build back up to that. And then from there you have to prove you're not just that. And I don't think he really could do that. No, like, he's not a runner type. Like he's tough, I would say, for sure. And he better be, because he got beat up last year a lot because he was taking a bunch of wild sacks. But like he has to really kind of get back just to the level of play he showed 2 years ago. And then we can start talking about him as factoring into this class. But he would be 8th of this group for me, because just last year's tape was just tough.
It was so bad. And in fairness to him, the offensive line got worse.
Yeah,
he lost Brock Bowers. He lost Ladd McConkey.
Losing Brock Bowers sucks.
He lost Ra Thomas. He lost Colby Young, who both were off-field issues, who were the top receivers at Georgia. Georgia off-field issues. Yeah, it's kind of a continuous thing.
Unfortunately.
But so in fairness, that's the case. But
Yeah.
he had 9 interceptions, 9 of his 12 over a 4-game stretch in the middle of the year, an important 4-game stretch
Really
over the
bad
middle of the year.
stretch.
That was really, really ugly. It got really bad. He's coming off of major elbow surgery because he tore his UCL in his final game of the season in the SEC championship. Their anticipation over the middle of the field was definitely a strength 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And then last year he thought that linebackers didn't exist.
Which
They did. They
look
caught
like
a
me
lot of
and
his
Madden too
passes.
much, man. You can't you don't wanna do that.
You
It's never
don't want to
good.
do that.
No.
And even the ball placement is just very questionable
Yeah,
with
very
him.
spotty. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm not a Carson Beck guy because I don't see a ceiling, and right now I don't really see a floor either.
It's
But
tough.
he's somebody worth bringing up because he's a big
Mhm.
name going to a new spot that just produced the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
So I felt like worth bringing him up. Any other quarterbacks that you have any thoughts on, or any of these guys that you want to say, like, this is the guy I hope the Steelers are amassing all that ammo for? Who do you think would be, the best fit? Any other thoughts?
As far as other quarterbacks, like I need to take a break from watching college prospects
Yeah.
at this point. I'm not gonna lie. I mentioned to you pre-show, Josh, that I watched like 200 prospects for the draft this past year. I'll be doing a lot more summer scouting, but I need to let my brain chill out for like a couple weeks about that. But it was
Yeah.
fun looking at these guys though, checking them out a little bit. Again, some of them I had already seen for last
Mhm.
year's class in case they came out. So, but I think the guy, like, if I had to pick,
Yeah.
obviously it'd be Sellers, because especially if we're gonna keep this like run game centric thing going, like
Mhm.
might as well get the guy who's basically another running back there. Like, might as well do it. Kind of the same idea with if they would have taken Milrow this year, or if they would have kept Fields. Like, let's bring the floor of the offense up. Let's have a runner back there that can do things, and then hopefully they can develop as passers. Kind of who I'd be looking at. But again, if he hits even close to his ceiling this year, I don't think anybody is going to be offered anything that they're going to get out of for that pick. So
Yeah.
we'll see there.
Yeah, we know the Steelers aren't going to be drafting number 1 overall. I think that's part of the theory with Khan wanting to get, the pick in 2026. And the last thought on Pickens, like,
Mm-hmm.
this move could have happened before the draft. There were talks before the draft. It didn't happen before the draft. The Steelers probably knew they were planning to move Pickens and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
draft a wide receiver. Like, I'm fine with all of that because there wasn't a quarterback they were going to be able to get this year. They're kicking the can down the road to next year. I love the thought process there. So I'm not upset that they didn't recoup a third in this year's draft for Pickens and that it's in next year's. Like, I'm thrilled about that actually, because I think that's when they're going to have a shot to actually get their franchise quarterback. So I'm in on the theory, and I think ultimately the guy they end up drafting will probably come out of this list of 8 guys unless somebody else shoots up
Really
the board that
shocks
we
us,
didn't see
yeah.
coming.
Which always seems to happen.
Yeah,
So
that does always seem to happen.
we'll see. We'll definitely be watching throughout the season, see what happens there.
Absolutely. And keep watching us, everyone listening. We
Yes.
really appreciate it. We wanted to keep things on a normal Wednesday schedule with me joining Shayne here, and it worked out well with the George Pickens news breaking. I'll be back to Monday next week. Tommy will be back from vacation next week, right,
He
Shayne?
should be, yeah, he should be coming back here in a couple of days. So yeah,
So make
definitely.
sure
Yeah.
that you're subscribed to the Still Curtain podcast to get all of that. You can follow Shayne Kubas on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on Blue Sky predominantly. I'm not really active on X
I
anymore.
want to be you right now, Josh. Just so you know. I wish I could be you. I cannot be, but I would love to be you right now.
It's been an improvement for my mental health. I will say
Yes,
that.
exactly.
So you can follow me on Blue Sky at Yourish3. And until next week, have a good one. Thanks for joining me, and go Steelers.